In a small, quiet town where everyone knew each other, there lived a 12-year-old girl named Clara. Her life was simple but filled with love and hard work. Clara's father, Mr. Thompson, worked as the school janitor, sweeping floors, fixing broken chairs, and making sure the classroom stayed clean for students and teachers alike. Though he didn't earn much, he always made sure Clara had what she needed: books, notebooks, and even little treats on special occasions. Despite their modest lifestyle, Clara never complained. She carried herself with pride, wearing hand-me-down clothes and smiling brightly at everyone she met. Clara attended the same school where her father worked. While most kids went home after classes, she often stayed behind to help him tidy up or just keep him company while he finished his tasks. Sometimes she'd sit on a bench outside, flipping through old textbooks left behind by graduating students. Clara loved learning new things and dreamed of becoming someone great someday, though she wasn't quite sure what that meant yet. What she did know was that she wanted to make her father proud. One crisp autumn afternoon during music class, something unexpected happened. The teacher, Mrs. Dawson, stood in front of the room holding the shiny violin. She explained how this elegant instrument could produce some of the most beautiful sounds in the world. As she demonstrated a short piece, the entire class listened in awe. Then came the moment that would change everything. Looking around the room, Mrs. Dawson joked, "Maybe we should let Clara give it a try. After all, if anyone needs practice, it's probably her." The classroom erupted in laughter, and Clara felt her cheeks grow warm. Mrs. Dawson hadn't meant any real harm. She was just teasing like adults sometimes do without thinking. But to Clara, those words stuck. Instead of feeling hurt or embarrassed, however, an idea sparked inside her mind. Why not try? The thought of playing such a graceful instrument fascinated her. When the bell rang, signaling the end of class, Clara approached Mrs. Dawson shyly. "Can I really try the violin?" she asked softly. Surprised by Clara's earnestness, Mrs. Dawson hesitated before nodding. "Sure," she said with a faint smile, still unaware of the impact her casual remark would have. That evening, Clara told her father about the incident over dinner. At first, Mr. Thompson frowned, worried that people were mocking his daughter. But when he saw the excitement in Clara's eyes, his expression softened. "If you want to play, then go for it," he said firmly. "We might not have much, but we'll figure something out." His words gave Clara courage. That night, lying in bed, she couldn't stop imagining herself standing on a stage, bow gliding effortlessly across strings, creating melodies that captivated everyone who heard them. The next day, Clara returned to Mrs. Dawson and asked if she could borrow the old violin sitting unused in the school's storage closet. It was dusty and slightly battered, but to Clara, it looked magical. Carrying it home wrapped in a cloth, she promised herself she'd prove everyone wrong, not out of anger, but because she believed deep down that she could do it. Little did anyone know, this seemingly ordinary girl was about to embark on an extraordinary journey, one that would inspire not only her family, but also the entire community. Clara's first few days with the violin were anything but smooth. The old instrument she had borrowed creaked and groaned under her touch, producing sounds more like a cat being startled than actual music. Her fingers fumbled awkwardly on the strings, and the bows slipped often, creating screeches that made her wince. But Clara didn't let frustration get the better of her. Instead, she reminded herself why she had started this journey in the first place, to prove to herself that she could do something amazing. Every evening after finishing her homework, Clara would sit cross-legged on the floor of their tiny living room, placing the violin carefully on her shoulder. She'd watch free online tutorials on an old laptop her father had repaired from scraps. At first, she struggled even to hold the bow correctly or find the right notes. Yet each time she hit a wrong note, she'd pause, take a deep breath, and try again. Slowly, ever so slowly, things began to click into place. A single clear note here, a short melody there. It wasn't perfect, but it was progress. Her neighbors soon grew accustomed to hearing strange noises coming through the thin walls of their apartment building. Some laughed quietly among themselves, thinking it was amusing how the janitor's kid thought she could learn such a difficult skill. Others shook their heads, assuming she'd eventually give up. But Clara barely noticed their whispers. To her, every scratchy sound was a step closer to something beautiful. And when she finally managed to play her first simple tune, a nursery rhyme she remembered from childhood, she felt a rush of pure joy. For the first time, she believed she might actually be able to do this. Her father, Mr. Thompson, watched his daughter practice night after night with a mix of pride and worry. He admired her determination, but hated seeing her struggle with such a worn-out instrument. One evening, while walking home from work, he stopped by the local pawn shop and asked if they had any spare violin strings. The shopkeeper handed him a set at a discounted price, sensing the man's sincerity. When Clara saw the new strings later that night, her eyes lit up with gratitude. "Dad, you didn't have to," she said softly, hugging him tightly. "I'll make you proud." As weeks turned into months, Clara's playing improved dramatically. What once sounded like chaotic noise now resembled real music. She began practicing pieces she found online, starting with easy songs and gradually moving on to more challenging ones. Sometimes, tears streamed down her face when a tricky section refused to come together. Other times, she giggled with delight when everything aligned perfectly. Music became her escape, her way of expressing emotions she couldn't put into words. Meanwhile, at school, teachers continued to underestimate her. During lunch breaks, a few of them joked about how Clara must think she was destined for greatness just because she owned a violin now. They assumed she'd never amount to much, dismissing her efforts as childish ambition. Even Mrs. Dawson, who had initially suggested the idea as a joke, hadn't expected Clara to take it seriously. When she passed by the storage closet one afternoon and noticed the violin missing, she chuckled to herself, thinking Clara had probably lost interest already. But what none of them realized was that Clara wasn't doing this for them. Every late-night practice session, every sore finger, every moment of doubt, it was all for her. She wanted to show herself that she was capable of achieving something extraordinary, no matter where she came from or what others thought of her. And though she still had a long way to go, Clara knew deep down that she was getting closer to her dream with each passing day. Unbeknownst to everyone around her, the quiet, determined girl was about to surprise them all in ways they couldn't imagine. Clara's journey with the violin wasn't easy, and there were moments when even her determination wavered. Her fingers, raw and blistered from pressing down on the strings, ached constantly. The calluses that slowly formed on her fingertips were painful reminders of how hard she was pushing herself. Her arms grew tired from holding the violin in position for hours, and sometimes, after long practice sessions, she could barely lift them. Yet every time she felt like giving up, she remembered her father's words. "If you believe in something, don't let anyone, or anything, stop you." Her father, Mr. Thompson, saw how much Clara was sacrificing and decided he had to do more to support her. He started taking extra shifts at the school, working late into the night cleaning classrooms and hallways. On weekends, he picked up odd jobs around town, fixing leaky faucets or mowing lawns for neighbors. It wasn't glamorous work, but it brought in a little extra money he secretly saved to help Clara pursue her dream. One evening, as Clara practiced in their dimly lit living room, her father walked in holding a small package. Inside was a sturdy, well-made violin bow. "I thought your old one might need a friend," he said with a grin, trying to sound casual. Clara's eyes filled with tears as she hugged him tightly. That bow became a symbol of her father's love and sacrifice, motivating her to push through even the toughest days. Despite her progress, life outside their home wasn't always kind to Clara. At school, some classmates teased her relentlessly about carrying around the battered violin case. They called her names like concert cleaner and laughed whenever she walked past them in the hallway. "Why are you even trying?" One boy sneered one day. "You'll never be good enough." His words stung, But instead of letting them break her spirit, Clara smiled and replied, "Maybe not today, but watch me tomorrow." Her quiet confidence silenced him, if only for a moment. Loneliness crept in during those difficult times. Many of her peers didn't understand her passion, and she often ate lunch alone, sitting under a tree while quietly humming melodies to herself. But music became her closest companion. When she felt isolated or misunderstood, she poured her heart into playing. Each note carried her emotions, her hopes, her fears, her dreams, and transformed them into something beautiful. Even when no one else was listening, Clara knew the music understood her. One particularly tough evening, after a long day of school and cruel comments from classmates, Clara sat on the edge of her bed, staring at the violin. For the first time, doubt crept into her mind. Was it worth all this effort? Would she ever truly be good enough? Sensing her sadness, her father knocked gently on her door and stepped inside. Without saying a word, he pulled out his phone and played a recording of a famous violinist performing a breathtaking piece. "Listen to this," he said softly. As the melody filled the room, Clara closed her eyes, feeling the power of the music wash over her. When it ended, her father looked at her and said, "They can laugh now, but someday they'll clap for you. Keep going, sweetheart." Those words reignited Clara's fire. She realized that greatness wasn't achieved overnight. It was built brick by brick, note by note. So she returned to her practice with renewed focus, determined to silence her critics not with anger, but with talent. Every scratchy note became a step forward, every mistake a lesson learned. And though the road ahead was still steep, Clara refused to give up. Little did she know, her perseverance was about to pay off in ways she couldn't have imagined. The stage was set, and soon the world would hear her play. The day of the school's annual talent show arrived, and the auditorium buzzed with excitement. Students hurried around, adjusting costumes, tuning guitars, and rehearsing lines one last time. Clara stood backstage, clutching her battered violin case tightly in her hands. Her heart pounded so loudly she was sure everyone could hear it. She had never performed in front of an audience before, let alone on a stage as big as this one. The thought of all those eyes watching her made her stomach churn. Her father sat proudly in the third row, wearing his best shirt, a slightly faded blue button-up he'd ironed carefully that morning. He gave her a thumbs up from the crowd, his warm smile calming her nerves just a little. "You've got this," he mouthed silently. Clara nodded, taking a deep breath. She reminded herself why she was here, not for applause or approval, but because she loved playing the violin. This was her chance to share something special with others, something she had worked so hard to create. When the MC called her name, Clara stepped onto the stage, the spotlight blinding her for a moment. The chatter in the room died down as hundreds of pairs of eyes turned toward her. She wore a simple dress sewn by her mother years ago, now slightly too short, but freshly pressed. Some students snickered when they saw her carrying the old violin case, its corners scuffed and edges frayed. Teachers exchanged amused glances, assuming this would be another awkward attempt at stardom. No one expected much from the janitor's daughter. Clara took her place center stage, adjusting the microphone stand to fit her height. With trembling hands, she opened the case and lifted out the violin. For a brief second, she hesitated, feeling the weight of the moment pressing down on her. Then she closed her eyes and drew the bow across the strings. The first note rang out, clear and pure, silencing every whisper in the room. It was soft yet powerful, like the first ray of sunlight breaking through a stormy sky. As Clara continued, the melody grew richer, weaving together emotions that seemed almost otherworldly. The music told a story of struggle, hope, resilience, and triumph. Each note carried the weight of her journey. The late-night practices, the teasing, the sacrifices her father had made, and the quiet determination that had driven her forward. The audience sat frozen, their initial smirks melting into expressions of awe. Even the teachers who had doubted her leaned forward in their seats, unable to look away. Parents whispered to each other, asking how someone so young could play with such depth and emotion. Clara's fingers danced gracefully over the strings, and her bow moved with precision, as if guided by an invisible force. The once battered violin sang under her touch, proving that beauty could emerge from imperfection. When the final note lingered in the air, the room remained silent for what felt like an eternity. Then, as if waking from a trance, the audience erupted into thunderous applause. People stood up, clapping and cheering, their voices echoing off the walls of the auditorium. Clara lowered the violin, blinking back tears of disbelief. She hadn't expected this reaction. She had only wanted to play her heart out. But seeing the standing ovation, hearing the cheers, and knowing she had silenced her critics left her overwhelmed with gratitude. Backstage, classmates who had once mocked her rushed to congratulate her, their faces flushed with embarrassment. "That was amazing," one girl exclaimed, hugging her tightly. "I can't believe you're that good." Another boy sheepishly admitted, "I didn't think you could actually do it." Clara smiled kindly, accepting their praise without bitterness. She knew their words wouldn't change overnight, but for now, she chose to focus on the joy of the moment. As she walked off the stage, her father met her with open arms, tears streaming down his face. "You did it, sweetheart," he said, his voice thick with emotion. "You showed them what you're made of." Clara hugged him tightly, realizing that this victory wasn't just hers. It belonged to her family, to their sacrifices, and to the unshakable bond they shared. That night, as she lay in bed replaying the performance in her mind, she knew this was only the beginning. The world was listening now, and she was ready to keep playing. The aftermath of Clara's performance at the talent show rippled through the school like a wave. The very same teachers and classmates who had once doubted her now looked at her with newfound respect, and more than a little guilt. Mrs. Dawson, the music teacher who had initially joked about Clara trying the violin, approached her the next day with an apologetic smile. "Clara," she began hesitantly, "I owe you an apology. I never imagined. Well, I didn't think you'd take my comments seriously. But what you did last night was extraordinary." Clara nodded politely, her calm demeanor masking the swirl of emotions inside her. She wasn't angry. She understood that people made mistakes, but hearing those words from someone she respected meant a lot. "Thank you, Mrs. Dawson," she replied softly. "I just wanted to try my best." Other teachers followed suit, offering their own apologies and praise. Even Mr. Harris, the stern principal known for his no-nonsense attitude, stopped Clara in the hallway to commend her. "You've reminded us all of something important," he said, his voice uncharacteristically warm. "Talent isn't defined by where you come from. It's about heart and hard work. You've got both in spades." For Clara, these moments weren't about gloating or proving anyone wrong. They were about redemption, not just for herself, but for everyone who had underestimated her. She forgave them graciously, knowing that sometimes people needed to see greatness before they could believe in it. Her humility only deepened their admiration for her. Word of Clara's performance spread beyond the school walls. The local journalist attended the event and wrote a glowing article about the janitor's daughter who silenced skeptics with her violin. The piece highlighted not only her musical talent, but also her determination and the sacrifices her family had made to support her dreams. Within days, the story gained traction, appearing in newspapers and online platforms across the region. People were captivated by Clara's journey, a reminder that brilliance could emerge from unexpected places. One evening, while practicing at home, Clara received a phone call from the school office. Confused, she answered to hear the principal's voice on the other end. "Clara, there's someone who wants to meet you," he said excitedly. Moments later, a renowned violinist named Evelyn Marlowe joined the call. Evelyn had seen the news article and was deeply moved by Clara's story. "Your playing is incredible," Evelyn said, her tone genuine. "I'd love to mentor you if you're interested." Clara's hands trembled as she held the phone, struggling to find words. Meeting Evelyn Marlowe, someone she had only seen in videos, and dreamed of emulating, felt surreal. Yes, of course, she finally managed to say, her voice shaking with excitement. From that moment on, Clara's life changed forever. Evelyn offered to teach her free of charge, introducing her to techniques and nuances she hadn't even imagined possible. Under Evelyn's guidance, Clara's skills soared to new heights. But amidst all the attention and opportunities, Clara remained grounded. She continued helping her father clean the school after hours, refusing to let fame, or the promise of it, change who she was. Her classmates, once quick to tease her, now sought her advice on everything from homework to hobbies. Some even asked if she'd give them violin lessons, which she politely declined, citing her busy schedule. Still, she encouraged them to pursue their passions, reminding them that success came from perseverance, not perfection. Her father watched all of this unfold with quiet pride. One night, as they sat together eating dinner, he reached across the table and squeezed her hand. "You've done something amazing, sweetheart," he said, his eyes glistening. "Not just for yourself, but for everyone who ever thought they weren't good enough because of where they came from. You've shown them that anything is possible." Clara smiled, feeling a warmth in her chest that had nothing to do with applause or accolades. She knew her journey was far from over, but for the first time, she felt truly unstoppable. The girl who had once been teased for daring to dream was now inspiring others to do the same. And as she tucked her violin safely into its case that night, she whispered a silent promise to herself. No matter how far she went, she would always remember where she started and the people who helped her get there. Years had passed since Clara first picked up that battered violin from the school storage closet, and now she stood on a stage unlike any other, the same auditorium where her journey began. This time, however, the room wasn't filled with whispers of doubt or smirks of disbelief. It was packed with thousands of people, including former classmates, teachers, neighbors, and even strangers who had traveled from afar to witness her homecoming performance. The air buzzed with anticipation as Clara stepped into the spotlight, her elegant gown shimmering under the bright lights. Her father, now older but still strong, sat in the front row, his eyes glistening with pride. Clara began her performance with the same piece she had played of the school talent show all those years ago, the one that silenced critics and changed her life forever. But this time, it felt different. Every note carried not just her own story, but the stories of everyone she had inspired along the way. As the music flowed through the hall, memories flooded back. Late-night practices in their tiny apartment, her father working extra shifts to support her dream. The laughter of classmates turned into cheers, and the countless moments when she doubted herself but kept going anyway. When the final note lingered in the air, the audience erupted into applause so thunderous it seemed to shake the walls. After the concert, Clara addressed the crowd, her voice steady yet filled with emotion. "This town, this school, and especially my family, they shaped me into who I am today," she said, looking out at the sea of faces. "I didn't come from privilege, and I faced challenges that could have stopped me. But instead of letting them break me, I used them to build something beautiful." She paused, her gaze landing on her father, who wiped away tears. "To anyone listening tonight, no matter where you come from or what obstacles you face, please remember this: your dreams are worth fighting for. And if someone tells you that you can't do something, let it fuel your determination, not your doubt." The next day, Clara unveiled a new initiative through her foundation, a scholarship program named after her father, Mr. Thompson. The scholarships would cover tuition, instrument costs, and private lessons for talented students from low-income families, ensuring they had the resources to pursue their musical passions. Dozens of applications poured in within weeks, each one a testament to the impact Clara's story had on others. One recipient, a shy 10-year-old girl named Mia, reminded Clara so much of herself, bright-eyed and eager to learn despite her humble beginnings. Watching Maya play during a practice session brought tears to Clara's eyes. She saw her younger self in every stroke of the bow. Clara's legacy extended far beyond music. Schools across the country adopted programs inspired by her foundation, creating opportunities for children from all walks of life to explore art, science, sports, and more. Teachers who once underestimated her became advocates for nurturing hidden talents, while parents found courage to support their children's unconventional dreams. Clara's journey proved that greatness wasn't defined by wealth or status. It was born from resilience, hard work, and the belief that anything was possible. As the years went by, Clara continued performing, composing, and mentoring young musicians, yet she remained grounded, always returning to her hometown whenever she could. She often visited her old school, sitting quietly in classrooms or walking the halls where her journey began. Sometimes, she'd stop by the storage closet where she first discovered the violin, running her fingers over its wooden surface with a smile. That simple act reminded her how far she had come, and how far others could go if given a chance. Her story became a timeless reminder that brilliance could emerge from the most unexpected places. Clara showed the world that success wasn't about fame or fortune. It was about inspiring others, breaking barriers, and using your gifts to make a difference. Through her music and her mission, she left an indelible mark on countless lives, proving that even the smallest spark could ignite a fire capable of lighting up the world. And as Clara stood on that familiar stage one last time before heading off to another tour, she whispered softly to herself, "Thank you, Dad. We did it." Then, with a final bow, she walked off stage, ready to write the next chapter of her extraordinary life. By the time Clara graduated high school, she had become a household name in her community and beyond. Her performances at prestigious venues earned her standing ovations, glowing reviews, and invitations to play on international stages. Yet, despite her growing fame, Clara never forgot where she came from, or the people who had doubted her along the way. Instead of harboring resentment, she used their skepticism as fuel to inspire others. One evening, after a sold-out concert in a grand auditorium, Clara returned to her hometown for a special performance at her old school. The gymnasium was packed with students, teachers, parents, and even former classmates who had once teased her. As Clara walked onto the makeshift stage, carrying her prized violin, the room fell silent. For a moment, she simply stood there, looking out at the sea of familiar faces. Then, without saying a word, she began to play. The melody that filled the air was hauntingly beautiful, a piece she had composed herself, inspired by her journey. It started softly, almost like a whisper, capturing the loneliness and self-doubt she had felt as a child. Gradually, it built into a powerful crescendo, reflecting her determination, hard work, and eventual triumph. By the time she played the final note, tears glistened in the eyes of many in the audience, including Mrs. Dawson, the teacher who had initially joked about her playing the violin. When Clara lowered her bow, the room erupted into thunderous applause. People cheered, clapped, and even whistled, unable to contain their admiration. After the performance, several teachers approached Clara to apologize once again, not just for underestimating her, but for failing to recognize her potential sooner. "You've changed how we see our students," one teacher admitted. "We'll never make assumptions about someone's abilities based on their background ever again." Clara accepted their apologies graciously, knowing that real change came not from blame but from understanding. She encouraged them to create opportunities for all students, regardless of their circumstances, reminding them that talent could be hiding in plain sight. Clara also took this opportunity to launch a foundation dedicated to providing musical instruments and lessons to children from low-income families. With the help of Evelyn Marlowe and other supporters, she raised funds to purchase violins, guitars, pianos, and more, which were distributed to schools across the region. The foundation offered free after-school programs taught by volunteer musicians, giving kids access to skills they might otherwise never have discovered. Clara often visited these programs, sitting down with young students to share her story and offer guidance. "If I can do it," she would tell them, "so can you." Her efforts didn't go unnoticed. Local news stations covered her foundation's work extensively, highlighting stories of children whose lives had been transformed by music. One boy, named Liam, became particularly close to Clara. Like her, he came from a modest background and faced ridicule when he first picked up a guitar. But with Clara's encouragement, he persevered, eventually performing alongside her at a charity event. Seeing him shine reinforced Clara's belief that every child deserved a chance to explore their passions. As years passed, Clara continued to perform worldwide, earning accolades and breaking barriers in the classical music world, a field often dominated by privilege. Critics praised not only her technical skill, but also her ability to connect emotionally with audiences. Her concerts weren't just performances. They were experiences that left listeners feeling inspired and hopeful. Yet, no matter how far she traveled or how large her audiences grew, Clara always made time to return home. Whether it was visiting her father, mentoring young musicians, or speaking at schools, she remained deeply connected to her roots. Her story became a beacon of hope for underprivileged communities everywhere. Teachers began encouraging students to pursue their interests, no matter how unconventional. Parents found courage to support their children's dreams, even when resources were scarce, and countless individuals, both young and old, found motivation to overcome obstacles in their own lives. Clara proved that greatness wasn't reserved for the wealthy or privileged. It belonged to anyone willing to work hard and believe in themselves. Through it all, Clara stayed true to who she was, a humble girl with big dreams, a heart full of gratitude, and a violin that carried the weight of her journey. Every time she played, she reminded the world that resilience, passion, and kindness could turn adversity into art, and that sometimes the sweetest melodies came from the hardest battles fought. With Evelyn Marlowe as her mentor, Clara's world expanded in ways she could never have imagined. Every weekend, she traveled to Evelyn's studio in the city, a place filled with polished instruments, sheet music stacked neatly on shelves, and walls adorned with awards and photographs from concerts around the globe. For Clara, stepping into that space felt like entering a dream. Yet, despite the grandeur, Evelyn treated her with warmth and patience, guiding her through lessons that challenged her skills and pushed her to new heights. Evelyn introduced Clara to pieces by composers like Bach, Vivaldi, and Tchaikovsky, music so complex it seemed impossible at first. But Clara attacked each challenge with the same determination that had carried her this far. She practiced for hours every day, often staying up late into the night perfecting even the smallest details. Her father would sometimes peek into her room, shaking his head with a mix of pride and concern. "You need rest too, sweetheart," he'd say gently. But Clara couldn't stop. She was hungry to learn, to grow, to become the best version of herself. Her hard work paid off quickly. Within months, Clara began performing at local events, community gatherings, charity fundraisers, and small recitals organized by Evelyn. Each performance drew larger crowds, and soon, people started referring to her as the prodigy who turned adversity into art. News outlets continued covering her story, highlighting not only her talent, but also her humble beginnings and unwavering spirit. Strangers approached her after concerts, sharing how her journey had inspired them to chase their own dreams. By the time Clara turned 16, she was invited to play at prestigious venues, concert halls with velvet seats, chandeliers glittering above, and audiences dressed in formal attire. Standing on those stages, bow in hand, Clara often paused to take it all in. Just a few years ago, she had been practicing in a cramped living room, using an old battered violin borrowed from the school closet. Now she held a beautiful instrument gifted to her by Evelyn, its rich tones resonating through halls designed for legends. One particularly memorable evening, Clara performed at a scholarship gala hosted by a renowned music conservatory. As she played, the audience sat spellbound, moved by the depth of emotion in her music. When she finished, the room erupted into applause, and several judges approached her afterward to offer full scholarships to study at their institution. It was a life-changing moment, not just for Clara, but for her entire family. Her father, sitting in the front row, wiped away tears as he realized his daughter's future was brighter than either of them had ever dared to hope. But Clara didn't let success change her. Despite the accolades and opportunities pouring in, she remained humble and grateful. She visited her old school regularly, spending time with students who reminded her of herself, young, eager, and full of potential. During one such visit, she gave an impromptu performance in the gymnasium, playing a piece that left teachers and students alike in awe. Afterward, she spoke to the kids, encouraging them to believe in themselves no matter what others said. "People will doubt you," she told them, her voice steady and kind. "But don't let their words define you. Work hard, stay true to yourself, and prove them wrong." Her message resonated deeply, especially with children from low-income families. Many saw themselves in Clara, the girl whose father worked as a janitor, who faced ridicule but refused to give up. Teachers who had once underestimated her now praised her as a role model, someone who embodied resilience and grace under pressure. Even Mrs. Dawson, the music teacher who had joked about her playing the violin, often invited Clara back to speak to her classes. "She reminds us why we teach," Mrs. Dawson admitted during one faculty meeting. "Clara shows us that talent isn't limited by circumstances. It's nurtured by passion and perseverance." As Clara's fame grew, she became more than just a musician. She became a symbol of hope. People wrote letters thanking her for inspiring them to pursue their passions, whether it was music, art, or something else entirely. Clara read each note carefully, touched by the impact she was having on others. Yet, through it all, she stayed grounded, always remembering the sacrifices her father had made and the struggles they had overcome together. Every time she stepped onto a stage, Clara carried not just her violin, but the weight of her journey, the teasing, the late-night practices, the moments when giving up seemed easier than pushing forward. And every time she played, she transformed that weight into something beautiful, proving to the world that greatness can emerge from the most unlikely places.